Yes, come in.
Why, hello there, good sir. Would you like to partake in a game only for the most civilized of men?
Most certainly, for we are in fact highly civilized men.
Indeed, truly, we arrive at a new dawn in these civilized times.
Well, how does one play a game of Meier civilization? Who done? I thought I was gonna say civilized.
It's quite simple, my good sir. We each control a civilization, and whoever's the fastest at achieving certain goals wins the game. Goals such as money grubber, hoarder, expansionist, civilized.
We must play at once! Hoo-hoo! Oh, ho, 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 ho! Barbarians! Are they living beings or walking trade goods?
I'd like to purchase your finest great wonder. I'd like to plunder your finest natural resources.
He who controls the points controls the civilizations.
I'd like to trade with the world's finest city-state.
I'd like to conquer it.
What in God's name is your city placement?
Who cares where they are? I need 8 cities to become civilized.
The inhospitable, the savagery!
Says the man who purchased a world wonder. Barbaric!
Preposterous! I will not be talked down by uncivilized swine!
You dare question my civility? On guard!
Sid Meier's Civilization. A new dawn. A new way of streamlining the civilization experience to the table? See, after our review of this 2010 Civilization the board game, we got bombarded with requests. I mean, tons of requests to review this new, actually purchasable in retail game.
Civilization. Are you like reviewing it?
Oh, and then it was also pretty much unanimous online that you had to play with this Terra Incognita expansion. Incognita, not incognito. So we're reviewing this as one product for this review. But what is this game? Well, it's a racing approach to the Civilization format. Players grow their civilizations by researching new tech, expanding on the modular board with cities, and even by building wonders. The Terra Incognita expansion throws in all sorts of stuff, including army figures, exploration, and forts to fight over on the map, upping the game to a listed 2 to 3 hours for 2 to 5 players. Please keep in mind that this review will only be from the lens of us playing with this expansion thrown in. So let's go Incognita. Here's a quick how to play. It's Civilization, so you control a civilization, like the Americans here or the Zulu here. You're trying to achieve 4 of these win condition cards. These could be anything from having a lot of wonders, having a lot of resources, or having a really strong battle result. 2 out of these 5 cards involve these things called forts on the map. Those are just areas you have to initially conquer and then keep holding on to them to keep that victory condition card. The rest of the victory cards are split in half, where you can only achieve one of the halves, and once you get that half, then you have it forever. No one can take it away from you. Every turn, all players do is just choose one action from all these cards called focus cards in front of each of them. The way this focus row works is that the higher your card is on the row, the stronger its activation will be. And then it resets all the way to the front. And then the rest of the cards slide to the right, if they can. That's literally one turn, just choosing a single action to activate. These focus cards encompass everything to build up your civilization, from industry cards to build new cities, economy cards to move your caravans around the map to gain trade goods from other cities, and then military to move and attack with army units. Each card can get temporarily better by putting trade goods on that card, which you can spend to boost that card when you activate it that one time. One important thing here is the science type of card, which will tick up your tech dial. And then if you cross the threshold on that dial, you get a tech upgrade. Just grab that corresponding focus card and replace the old one. You may have seen these types of terrain under the numbers though, and terrain is a huge part of this game's map. The mountains, desert, and grasslands actually mean something, where you can only move or build on that type of terrain difficulty or lower. Mountain is the hardest at difficulty 5, and grassland the easiest at difficulty 1. So if you activate troop movement on level 5, you can move through any land area you want. Water cannot be moved across without further improvements. As for fighting, all you have to do to attack is move into a space with an enemy piece. Could even be a neutral piece like a barbarian, then roll 1 die, and add that number to your attack modifier, which is typically something involving your focus row number. The defender rolls the same way, adding to their defense modifier, which is typically the terrain difficulty. Let's finally get to resources that you can gather by extending the influence around your cities. These can be the pathway to getting a victory condition, but more often than not are good ways to help buy wonders, which are fantastic abilities to permanently get. Each matching resource on the bottom of the wonder here will discount it by 2. When you get a wonder, it gets permanently attached to a city. Last big thing, exploring, where you can spend 1 movement to explore from any home tile. Then just plop down that weird hexagon combination thing in any way you want, as long as it touches 4 parts of the map and your current exploring figure. That's it, just take turns of doing 1 action each. And once a round is done, meaning everyone has done 1 action, then you rotate this little dial here, triggering some sort of universal event. Like here, we would cycle out the World Wonders. Here are the pros of Civ A New Dawn with this expansion. Now first off, this game is just filled with color. The board especially is fun to look at with all its different types of terrain, like you got mountains meeting deserts like that. Then you got these natural wonders like the Galapagos Islands next to hills and such. Let's just move on to the gameplay pros now. One of the key ingredients of this game's streamlinedness is this focus card system. It's a smooth way to get players thinking about certain turns as they realize that bottom actions they don't do actually move up here. Each card you trigger has real consequences as you play this puzzle of thinking when to activate each card in your row at what point. Going into this is the tech progression, which will literally replace focus cards no matter where they are, putting them back in the exact same slot. You can jump from any tier to any tier here. This is really satisfying to use astrology, to watch the stars, then suddenly see the newest technological trend and have a sudden jump in focus card power. What's more, you can plan to move up a focus card, then upgrade it, then trigger the new upgraded card at the highest point in your row for a massive boost. Like, foreign trade becomes steam power to move each of your caravans up to 6 spaces even across water, where before it was just 1 caravan moving 3 spaces. The next gameplay pro is that Civ A New Dawn gives players a highly interactive map to play around with. There's going to be these barbarians on the map that can move around and attack us, we the non-barbarians in this game. And these can even respawn on the map, so you gotta watch out for that. Or how there's neutral city-states that exist that you're encouraged to send your caravans to, since that can give you literal new abilities and trade goods to boost your cards. If you're feeling especially warmongery, you can just attack the city-states, conquer them, and put your own city in their place. Its abilities are turned off, and now it's yours until someone liberates it. That player can choose to fight you over the city-state, take it for themselves, or revert it back to neutral. How's that for a story of the City of Seoul just bouncing around civilizations? There's also the forts on the map, which don't give any abilities, but are neutral fortresses for your civilizations to acquire. Then you repurpose it for your own means, as when you beat one in battle, you get a permanent city on the map. And just like the city-states, someone can take that fort from you and put their own city there. And terrain really matters. Mountain, and to a lesser degree deserts, feel like appropriate roadblocks for a growing civilization. Whatever's next to your cities affects placement of influence called control tokens, or the movement of your armies trying to conquer the forts. Terrain helps defense too, so a barbarian on some mountains might be a sturdy 5 strength in defense. And if you can build a city on a mountain, it's a whopping 10 defensive bonus. Players can also explore the map, widening their possibilities and giving more terrain combinations to play around with. Something else that really hammers in this coolness of the civilization world are these world wonders. Now these are 4 stacks of permanent abilities. These range from ancient to modern in the stacks, really giving you some cool new stuff to combo with in the game. No, like really, these go in hand with the rest of the mechanics to start widening up this game. The Ancient Hanging Gardens lets you put down a control token every turn. Ooh, that's a good tempo increase for more influence on the map. Or the Oracle will let you swap 2 adjacent cards in your focus row. Ah, that's accelerating certain cards. The Great Lighthouse can let you start building cities on the edge of the map. Wow, wow, okay. Some of them get bonkers with the modern era, like the famous Jesus statue, letting you literally replace enemy cities after you buy it. Or when someone else captures the city it's in, so make sure you protect it if you bought it, lest opponents use its ability against you to replace your cities. A New Dawn also has this really interesting diplomacy mechanic, where by simply moving a caravan to an enemy city, you get to choose and take one of their 5 diplomacy cards that all have an ability written on them. This lends to all sorts of options, as well as providing some pretty interesting counterplay. Like, you can simply send an embassy to give them 1 trade good and you get a resource. Or you can non-aggression pact. So if they ever attack you, you move up your military card all the way to its highest focus slot. There's even something called open borders, which involve using this thing called districts, we're too lazy to elaborate on, but essentially, you can start using your opponent's stuff on the map to trigger your stuff. Civilization just has this satisfying progression of everyone building up their civilization, which thank goodness it has because this is a civ game after all. Everyone has more opportunities by building more cities, which expands the options where you can build from or also spawn units from. Better tech for everyone is better focus cards, which means that individual actions you take are now stronger permanently. The game just has a lot of external abilities that stack up. Getting multiple world wonders, that's a lot of new abilities. You have all these diplomacy cards, including the ones from city-states to juggle. You can even have these natural wonders, which are resources that never get expended, meaning you can use them turn after turn. Now for the asymmetry. There's 8 factions plus 10 in the expansion, giving you a whopping total of 18 to use. Each of these factions has their own unique tech card and also a different starting layout of focus cards, which will really start to change your opening moves. You can have the Japanese, who with their divine wind, treat mountains near water or the edge of the map as a forest, which is a 3-tier difficulty instead of the mountain's difficulty of 5. So they can easily move and build, and when others attack them, those attackers still have to treat those spaces as a mountain. Or there's the Inca, who have a way to combo like crazy by putting control tokens on mountains, which in turn lets them put down another control token, and maybe even another. Just like, look at all these factions and their cards. When we combine them with the double-sided modular boards and all the different wonders that can come out, the replay value is massive, and I mean massive in this game. World Wonders will always come out differently, and you take out 2 from each color each game. But most importantly, there are 10 split objective cards, and then you pick 3 randomly to add on to your 2 for objectives. That's a lot of different possibilities of objectives. Really, in every game of Civ, you're just doing a different part of the giant chunk of what's provided here because of the different strategies that these victory cards demand. In every game, you want to look at the objectives, then analyze the board, and then think of a strategy, bearing in mind things like terrain or other roadblocks like barbarians. Maybe in this game, you want to prioritize control points. Maybe in this game, you want to attack to get cities. Maybe in this game, you want to build a bunch of wonders. This lets you really play around with different factions and the tech that goes with them. Maybe one game, you're researching to tier 4 capitalism and have 3 caravans move 6 spaces to get crazy trade efficiency, and then do another action. Or, tier 4 urbanization for map control. You can build a city and control tokens so far away from anything else you own. Abilities even get as crazy as moving barbarians in certain ways to pressure opponents. As for player count, this game scales decently well from 2 to 5 players. This is because adding more players doesn't really throw off the balance because you're still going for these objectives. With more people, there's more forts added to the map to not make competition for those changed too much. Just note that with more people, there's going to be a little more RNG spawns because there's going to be more exploration happening. For the last pro, we want to say that Civ, A New Dawn, really does run true to time. It is a very fast game. Turns happen pretty fast once you get past the rule hiccups, as you just do one single action. Attacking is just each player rolling a die once. This game is definitely going to be 2 to 3 hours for 5 people. But this is actually almost too true to time. We'll get back to that later, but first, it's time for the beginning of the cons. The first gameplay con is the umbrella that this game just does not handle random as well. See, Civ, A New Dawn, even with the expansion, is still fundamentally a streamlined Euro that runs fast, but has punishing randomness everywhere. The RNG sneakily causes players' win clocks to constantly move ahead or behind by a couple turns, causing predetermined wins. Like, we have to talk about exploring, which is a fun civ idea. Well, first off, there is a big illusion of choice in getting to orient these down, where there's typically only 1 to 2 options to orient it, to fulfill the prerequisites of it touching 4 spaces currently on the board. Not only does this create weird dead zones that never get filled in with water because they're never enclosed, really screwing with people's expansion plans, barbarians in this game move randomly across the board every once in a while, and destroy your things when moving, including your cities. Yeah, your cities, that's right, even your built cities. Okay, so sometimes you just have to kill those barbarians, right? Well, it's a toss-up in how much defense they have with their location spawns. It's not too uncommon for them to spawn on mountains, which is rough at 5 defense. But then, let's just talk about how random combat outcomes are insanely swingy. Combats against barbarians early to mid-game are rough, with players and barbarians having similar power levels. If you lose those die rolls though, well, those barbarians are still on the map and can keep wreaking havoc. Ooh, yeah, your extremely important once per turn action is down the drain, and you often can't reasonably attack again for a while due to the fact that your combat card resets, meaning that now it is literally impossible to move into the terrain to attack. It's not even that good to attack them because it just gives you 1 trade good. Well, heck, you probably needed 1 trade good to kill them in the first place. So you're really not gaining anything from having to fight barbarians. So it's typical misery when they get explored next to you. Let's actually go a step further and talk about winning combats against forts, which is so incredibly swingy. If you win, you get a literal victory condition, as well as a city on that space. Sheesh, yeah. The difference between winning or losing that fight early based off of that is gargantuan. Remember how this is a Euro that wants you to rush objectives, and so a failed attack is strictly flushing down an action down the toilet. This is on top of having you to wait a bunch of turns to do it again, putting you strictly behind. Oh, and then how good your starting tile is can be all over the place, but you see it after you pick your faction. Well, that's not good. So you're telling me that if I pick a highly map-reliant faction like America, I have no idea whether I'll be able to get the natural wonders that let me trigger my ability? Or maybe playing Japan with lots of water on the map is good, when there's not so much, they're just an okay faction. You may be asking, that's kind of weird. Aren't random battle outcomes and exploration randomness part of the civilization formula? Well, usually games with powerful emergent randomness mitigates those advantages and or snowballing through politics, which A New Dawn doesn't really have, especially with how fast it is. The next con is the win conditions we keep talking about, where you have 10 and then you randomize and pick 3 of them to use. Yeah, the problem here is that these win conditions are just not balanced, and certain combinations are just way too easy. Like, anything involving wonders is significantly easier than everything else, given that by capturing a fort early, you instantly have a second city. So now you can just dedicate the pottery focus card to just building a wonder, instead of worrying about first using it to build a city. This wasn't something that was a problem in base A New Dawn, because these guys, the forts, they didn't exist. The fact that forts have 6 defense feels way too low, where their cousin, like city-states, have 8 defense, so it should have been at least 8 for the forts, at least. Anyways, wonders in general aren't that expensive, with ways to spend trade goods for them and infinitely tap natural wonders. To make wonders even more cheesable, sometimes the game will even have RNG spawns of resources to pay for wonders, right next to your starting capital, or fort you just captured. Compare this to some objective where positioning on the board actually matters, like having to build 8 cities. Well, that is really easy to stop by someone, including barbarians, blowing up your cities scattered all around the board, and then building in general is restricted by terrain. Or man, good luck ever going for 3 tier 4 techs before someone gets 2 wonders. Simply put, it is just too good to rush wonders if they come up, and then they let you start doing all the other objectives helped by their wonder abilities. Now, we really harped on these win conditions because going first is just better in this game. See, the game never changes player order. Rather, the game just ends whenever someone completes 4 objectives, and then you just play out the rest of that round. So going first gives someone first pick to new or cheaper wonders, or maybe even resources on the map, or maybe even get to attack a neutral fort before your opponents do. The list just goes on and on and on and on and on. It's especially brutal because you can never take away opponents' win conditions except for the forts. But to get one of the forts, you need to go all the way across the map and then attack that fort, and even winning that combat is not guaranteed because of the dice rolling for combat. This actually gets us to how this game tends to discourage player interaction. Yep, that's right. See, the reason why attacking other players' forts is not commonplace is because players are not in the mindset of wanting to attack others. Remember, attacking others typically doesn't advance your objectives. This game's all about the objectives if you want to win. Sometimes attacking doesn't do a whole lot either. If you're trying to do something like destroy someone's control tokens to stop them from getting this objective, they can put down control tokens just as fast, or faster than you are attacking them. Remember, it's hard to spam attacks because of distance plus terrain restrictions. Oh, and if your opponents aren't going for control token points, control tokens as a concept block combat movement, which can stifle movement options late game, especially if you wanted to attack somebody else. In general, the cost is too high for yourself to try to mess up others. Technically, it's possible to attack and ravage your enemies if you do win the die roll, but it usually takes at least 2 turns to get there, with the consequences not being substantial. We have to go back to exploration, where the only way to explore is from your home tile. And since players start on the corners of the map, well, when you explore, you'll end up exploring away from everybody else. Away. Wow, yeah, now people are encouraged to do their own thing in their own directions, and now the map just gets too big overall. A size like this would be fine if terrain wasn't a mechanic to slow people down from moving. There's also just too many forts where you have as many as you do players. This gets concerning in, say, 4 players where there's plenty of forts to go around. But then, weirdly, you can place forts wherever you want. So usually you just place it right next to you for a free city. This is a literal win condition, remember. But then it's still hilariously weirder that one person can potentially get 2 without stepping on anyone's toes, because if someone fails to get their nearby fort because of bad luck, another player can just walk in there themselves. A point of contention like forts should be in the middle of the map, not a freebie point next to you. Getting 2 forts should be utterly insane and almost never happen, but the fact that it can be easy in some games, as people place forts themselves, is concerning. It's a little strange that forts almost feel like an area control mechanic, where you want to grab and hold points. However, there's so many points, located at everyone's most convenient location, that it feels like holding them doesn't incur any conflict. Okay, now let's get to the factions. There is a clear imbalance of them. One that really caught our eye is this one here, Indonesia. This astoundingly lets you treat water spaces on the edge of the map as all adjacent to one another. Holy cow, this is freaking insane. When looking at the map tiles, water is on half of them, so you pretty much just spawn on any edge of the map. For a game with so many permutations of stuff and emergent randomness, this is the most consistently busted. Think about it, at any time, you can just teleport. Then you can trade with anyone, including a city-state just explored you want to get an ability with. We won't harp on these too much, because these are all over the place and winning condition reliant in unhealthy ways. Okay, so like, what about this one? Hold it. This is really good at getting diplomacy cards from the same person. Well, this is really busted if you have this win condition that tells you to get 4 diplomacy cards. Remember that you choose your faction before you ever see the map or any of the objectives, which is super whack, especially for the map. Luckily, there are 18 factions, so it is possible for everyone to just play the okay meh factions for fairness sake, but then you're throwing out a lot of the interesting asymmetrical nuances with the game. The next con is how these government tokens, they hurt the game. Government tokens are these things you can acquire at the start of certain rounds that make a certain type of card always better. Like for example, communism here always makes building cities easier. Also, how many times are games gonna refer to communism as a type of government? It refers to stateless society? Anyways, these being free additions make it easy to just spam a certain path once you fulfill your early objectives. When you would normally get slowed down from an action resetting, with government, now you can just spam those focus cards. These governments really break the timing of the game, since the focus row system is designed around focus cards being in specific positions, and now they're not. Oftentimes, having government on a focus card is just stronger than upgrading that card to tier 3. It's just such insane tempo. Actually, another specifically expansion thing, these new focus cards for each faction, which tell you to take out a starting focus card, or force you to research it later if you want that category. These are just kind of here with the expansion and don't add much to the game, with abilities that sound cool, but usually are just fluff. In fact, these are making the game's RNG problems worse. Like, they can be really meh at best with the Chinese writing, like, wow, this is practically the same as the initial astrology. Or they can be at worst broken, like this inconstate workforce to just plop down control tokens everywhere. We would have much rather had a passive that each faction can permanently use. Okay, so naturally looking back, a lot of the expansion stuff is just not healthy to the game. Forts have their weird mechanics and enable too easy victory conditions. Government tokens break the timing of the focus row, and then these special faction focus cards aren't really anything special. A lot of the cons just culminate into one conclusion, that the game is just too fast once you got the hang of it. You can end the game at about an hour with 3 to 4 people once you throw in everything. Like there's even these things called districts, which are like control tokens, but better and break the speed of the game. And of course, the aforementioned forts. In fact, games of Civilization: A New Dawn end up having very low adaptation to anyone else, as you just rush objectives and aren't incentivized to stop anyone else, since that strictly slows down your engine with its only one simple action a turn. It really does feel like you're just waiting for everyone else to take their turn. Like, there is something to be said that this is very anti-civ-like when you can build a wonder within 5 actions in a civ game that still has a board. So while the New Dawn is branded as Sid Meier's Civilization, this is in fact a race for victory conditions, front and center. And once those conditions are met, the game actually just ends. Okay, so now we're done with the gameplay cons and can move on to the next category, accessibility. And yeah, the starting accessibility for this is just god awful. Oh my god, remember, we're evaluating this as one product. So a big reason why we decided to cover both of these at the same time is because the expansion drastically changes the rules of the original. It's like a base game at 1.5 edition. But that type of change in a board game is extremely annoying to handle with 2 rulebooks that approach mechanics differently. You have to dual wield them when going through the reworked focus rows. There's new army units that interact with old combat rules, and then there's patched objectives that need to be defined in both of the rulebook's backs. Like, what the heck? The new factions have different backs, and some of the old faction backs are partially outdated because these objectives no longer exist in the game. Oh, and then their fronts are partially outdated too, because look here for the Chinese, it says put astrology here. Nope, you actually replace that with their faction tech, and that just leads to weird confusion. This expansion rulebook drastically needs an appendix that defines everything, and I know you can do it FFG because you've done it with these games. The expansion rulebook right now currently has no table of contents and sure, has this area to define some things, but isn't great. We kept scratching our heads on why there's no player aid. Why? Why isn't there something that defines what a control token is, what a rival space is, how combat modifiers work? The list just goes on and on and on. Remember, we're evaluating both of these at the same time because that seems to be the common consensus on how to approach Civ: A New Dawn. And so here, we're issuing a bold warning that this expansion is an absolute nightmare to start if you haven't started with the original first. We hit some snags with iconography too. Namely, there's just too much text on the focus cards. They should have used symbols or a line to distinguish actions, because currently upgrading technologies doesn't look very different at a glance. It's quite easy to mix up and as an upgrade for or. For something that you're looking at constantly, where are the bullet points? Like, oh hey, the bottom here has the right idea. Now, how about these world wonders? Them having color overlap with players is kind of weird. Plus, the art and token should just be bigger, so there's less chance of the cities blocking the art. I gotta fix that again. These are already partially blocking the terrain, so they might as well double down and have these be longer or bigger, since the room around each city never grows beyond a couple of circular control tokens. Capturing wonders is some of the counterplay in this game, so this game needs to not accidentally discourage that visually. Then, as we were just praising terrain appearance in the pros, the terrain gets covered up as you play the game. Terrain is the most important thing, and it just gets partially covered up by all these control tokens that just look awful and are just visual noise. Also, these control token borders should be yellow, not white. That way they don't blend with the middle icon so players can actually tell whether or not something is reinforced. And then the player color of green is just a terrible idea when it comes to putting pieces in grassland. Sheesh. And these natural wonder tokens are a pain to find because of how small they are. Why didn't they just put the name of these on the map? Civ: A New Dawn is just a very visually noisy game with all the other players' focus cards and map. The last con is some poor quality of components. We're annoyed at this bending focus row, where we wanted it to be an entire player board. And why aren't the names of terrain written on the row? Like, is it intuitive to you that the hill terrain that keeps getting mentioned on cards is this dark green space? The tech dial is just way too small, and some plastic here just doesn't seal well, but we're not sure if we just got a lemon. Then, even smaller, these capital versus normal cities look way too similar. From afar, capitals don't look like they have any air of importance at all. FFG did it again. There is zero storage solution whatsoever besides maybe 4 or 5 plastic bags, which FFG should be ashamed for. You must buy your own plastic bags. A lot of them. Okay, so with all those cons out of the way, the only nitpick we could find is that this expansion box, physical quality, is just garbage. Like, when you open it, you're just gonna get these weird white cardboard supports inside. Luckily, this entire game with the expansion does fit inside the base game Civ New Dawn box, so I guess you're just supposed to throw this away, which is kind of a shame because it looks nice. I mean, spending $50 for this and throwing away is kind of a poopy feeling. Now it's time for a recommender score, where we try to critically evaluate the pros and cons of this. That is, Civilization: A New Dawn with the Terra Incognita expansion. And so, with this combined product is going to be a 3 out of 10. It is bad. Bad. This is such a strange game to us that feels to be being pulled in a bunch of different directions, but ultimately could never escape its roots of being a tight Euro. It was originally very streamlined with the base game, which had a clear stance. But then, the expansion added in the cool Civ stuff, like exploration, more fighting, because after all, this has Sid Meier's in its title, right? But then when you start adding in all this stuff, there's no clear identity on what this game really is. It's trying to be more like Civilization as we know it, but that possibility was already thrown out the window by removing these set victory conditions like military conquest or technological supremacy. Also, if it's trying to go in a more serious direction with 4x elements, where the heck was the fleshing out of the rules? After all, this is supposed to be 2 to 3 hours now, instead of 1 to 2, and should give appropriate player aids. You know, maybe this all has to do with the designer of the expansion being different than the original New Dawns. We have to settle that despite having a lot of things to play around with, this game ultimately doesn't do the Civ IP well. Like, sure, okay, there's government in the game. Okay, and then there's some asymmetry with factions with Civ 6 looking art. Okay, there's also these cool wonder abilities, like this one I have no idea how to pronounce. But it just doesn't add up to feel like Civilization at all. Like, it is really something to be said that the nukes in this game, nuclear energy, don't destroy cities at all. They don't. Look at what this A New Dawn did to Gandhi. Look how sad he is. So sad that he didn't even want to be part of this game. Oh, wait a second. A Civilization without Gandhi? 0 out of 10 game. In all seriousness though, Civilization is an epic experience on the computer that people are probably looking for a semblance of. After all, people generally don't really care about the aesthetic with Civ, it's the gameplay and mechanics. A New Dawn is just fundamentally racing to complete randomized objectives. Sometimes those randomized objectives ask for more combat, sometimes they don't. Yet no matter what, player interaction can be practically non-existent early game, and diplomacy isn't really diplomacy by taking someone else's diplomacy card. Oh hey look, that's a prerequisite to win the game here. But if you really want a casual Civilization Euro that plays fast with very clear objectives, maybe you could start with the base game. By taking out military conquest as a set victory condition, this could be a forgiving nature that some want out of Civilization building. Since it feels nothing close to a 4X, this system will actually handle 2 players decently well. And this term, 2-player Civilization, might be kind of wonky if you're coming from other Civilization games. And there's also a 1-player variant online, unofficial, that we have yet to try, but that one's popular. Oh man, Civilization: A New Dawn. We have to commend it for being extremely time efficient while having lots to play around with. but you may not be able to actually play around with those very well if you want to win the game. This would have been so much better received if it wasn't branded as Sid Meier's Civilization. Because if it was something else, then it could have gone harder on having something with a much clearer identity.
What did I just play? Civilization, A New Dawn Terra Incognita was an absolute disaster for me. A 2 out of 10 terrible time. Alright, here we go again, listing off what I like in board games. You know the drill. I love it when there's a gajillion options and tons of possibilities for players to do cool things within the game's mechanics. Not with New Dawn, you're extremely incentivized to only do focus cards with high values, or spam the ones that rushes an objective for you. Like if the goal is to have a bunch of cities, why the hell would I do any other action in the later half of the game that isn't just building cities? Especially if I have a government marker and some trade tokens on it. Oh, I see a sick opportunity to attack that dude. In a few turns, positioning barely even matters in this game. It's mostly just managing turn timers. Because of that, I'm barely paying attention to what my opponents are doing while I just rush my engine towards nothing but the victory conditions. And here's a bunch of control points in your way. Yep. All my stuff is completely safe. Get wrecked, loser. You can't stop me. Not like you were planning on hauling your ass across the entire map to attack my stuff anyways. Reminder, you can't even move and attack every turn. You gotta wait a few turns every time because mountains and deserts, I fucking hate sand, it's coarse and rough and irritating. Also, I despise the art so much that playing this game is like forcing me to watch that cringy Grubhub ad on repeat. And don't even get me started on the randomness of starting tiles. Because if I see your ass immediately taking a fort while also dive bombing your caravan to a city-state that just happened to be 3 spaces away from your capital, while I don't have any unfair tricks of my own in the first few turns, I kid you not, I'm just gonna concede. You win already. Why? Why do board games keep doing this? If you're gonna make a Euro that's super uninteractive, don't make randomness matter so much because then there's no counterplay when someone high rolls. So yeah, your options are super limited because of the focus bar system in combination with how nothing matters except doing whatever the victory cards say to do. Okay, what about playing as different asymmetric factions? They don't even do stuff that fundamentally different from each other. It's pretty much all pick your flavor of slight improvement in one random aspect of the game, which may not even matter because of the victory cards. But then there's some factions that might be randomly super high impact because of how the map or victory cards are. Oops. And to add insult to injury, this game has the Civilization name slapped onto it. This feels nothing like Civ. I feel like Halo fans right now who are utterly disappointed by the Halo TV show for basically just having a whole bunch of familiar names slapped onto something that's nothing like what fans originally came to love. We have the OG Civ right here. Why would we not just play this? So ultimately, I hate how the game looks like every Clash of Clans mobile game ever, plus how much crap blocks off the map art. And to make it all worse, New Dawn plays like an uninteractive Euro, but it isn't even crunchy, so I'm autopiloting myself towards victories in an hour, despite the game saying it's supposed to be 2 to 3 hours. Who balanced this game? Take the fort, get some wonders, build some cities. Oh, I win now, wow. Like if there was a little more crunch going on so I wasn't just autopiloting my actions, I could see my personal score going up to a 3 out of 10. But the fact that the strategy is so simple while everyone is so annoyingly sequestered off from each other, hiding behind distance and control points is just mind-numbing. I imagine playing just the base game would actually restore some balance and would be preferable for me, but goddamn do I not want to see this game on the table ever again. At least it's not a 1 because there is that initial planning to figure out the most optimal path to nab 4 victory conditions, but beyond that, there is no joy in executing that plan whatsoever. And I hate how my friends can't reasonably stop me or vice versa while we're playing. A dull victory fails to set my soul ablaze. But a win that comes after outmaneuvering everyone else at the table despite other best attempts to stop me, that's what it's all about, baby, woo!
My personal score for Civ, A New Dawn, with this Terra Incognita expansion, is gonna be a 2 out of 10. Terrible. I really don't like this game. I went in with the complete wrong expectations because I thought that this was gonna be some type of super streamlined 4X because there's armies and then there's also exploration. Yeah, I'm stupid because this game is just a race or a rush for randomized objectives. This rush just feels so antithetical to what Sid Meier's Civilization is, a game with politics where you could explore the game's world, have epic battles late game, see your nation expand fruitfully, etc., etc. So I knew that this box just couldn't be that epic, but it had to have at least some semblance of Civ, right? Nope, it really does not. A lot of the time when you're playing, you're doing stuff that feels Not like what a civilization would do, like spamming cities randomly across the board to try to achieve an objective. Or maybe you just fight a fort NPC once, or just spam all these little control tokens on the board that you try to get an objective with, and I hate counting them. I just hate control tokens as a concept in general. These little things are so abstract, they block movement, they feel terrible in the hand. Actually, speaking of abstract, basically everything about this game feels abstracted to me, which is the worst for a Civilization-esque game. Wonder abilities are the least abstracted thing here, but end up getting spammed by everyone to get objectives to make it feel like they have no real weight to them. Wonders don't feel like wonders, and to get them, you spend resources, which are the only way to use resources, which makes them also not feel like resources. Cities don't feel like cities that actually help your economy. They just give you more control token options. Oh great, they're basically control token 2.0. Fine, this isn't a fighting heavy game, it's a Euro. But unfortunately, I don't like it as a Euro either. Like, the focus card system is a good idea, but I found that I just don't find it enjoyable. Turns actually feel rather autopilot-y because I just resolve whatever is in the 4th or 5th column. As to do anything else would be almost always wildly inefficient unless you have the abstracted government token. Then, even for a Euro, this has extreme levels of solitariness. I literally don't care about what anyone else is doing, because attacking players is hard, but also usually inconsequential. I really wish there was a way to move outside of your normal turn. The game ultimately feels like it was initially dangling all of this sweet candy in front of me with the tech card possibilities, some fighting mechanics, and faction asymmetry in a quick package. But I can't actually grab these things, and instead they just felt like fluff because the game is so fundamentally do these things. Just do these objectives, screw everything else, and once these are done, the game ends. Great. That's Civilization, I guess. It's supposed to be Civ. Oh, and then this game is an utter eyesore. There is way too much unnecessary reading on the cards that discourages me from getting more tech. Components in general, like control tokens, look really janky to me and don't feel good. Civ A New Dawn with Terra Incognita just feels like work to me, as the game feels completely mechanical with no soul anywhere. I'm just so confused on what it wants to be when I'm playing. I never feel like I'm growing any civilization, balance is complete jank, and it doesn't do a good job of being a short game with tons of rules overhead and pieces. Like, I just completely stopped caring about what other text people have, or what tiny city-state abilities they have because I'm so clocked out. I could not find any climactic moment, much less turn that I was excited by. It was just, oh, once someone gets ahead in objectives, they basically auto-win the game. This game was a real eye-opener for me because it really made me realize that our group is pretty good at playing board games. And once we exploit weaknesses, imbalances in a game that are so core to the design, the game gets shredded. Thank you for watching the video. As always, I'd like to see what other games you have suggested for us to review. And before we go any further, it's a quick shout out to one of our patrons, our Mad Lad of Cardboard, ZL, where his fish passed away. So let's give a couple seconds of condolences to his fish, which he has refused to give me the name of. Okay, now let's thank the patrons. We got Mayo G, Brian C, Clifford H, Aaron W, Max B, Warrior, Jeremy M, C, Charlie P, Quentin F, Samus, Travel, Sarah, F, K, Brian D, Jarvala, Matt G, Space, Ryan G, Brian G, Tom Beer, Mark A, Jeb, Evan B, Charles B, Josh A, Busbar, Roder, Sophie C, Brian Z, Colin, Hudson T, Pearson B, Omar F, MI, Ethan B, Bradley J, Sean C, Calvin V, Dark S, Esco, Alex L, Rob Parson, 22, David, Joshua, Pat, Cyril C, Ilwayne, Colin, Amir H, Riley Spain, Keanu S, Wapus, Colin, John P, Nicholas R, Robin Audrey, Kevin G, Alex G, Tim F, Jordan F, Ben A, Jeff B, Alvin Y, Alvin Y, Michael Z, Jeremy G, Vivian J, and also these guys on screen. We also got our Mad Lads of Cardboard to thank. We got the Doctor, ZL, Jeff L, Peter Z, and that guy right there. We also got our Mad Lady of Cardboard. We got Amy. That wraps up the Civilization board game stuff from us for a while. That was really doozy to review. Jesus, yeah. Okay, well, yeah, see you guys later. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. Bye-bye.